Welcome into the Heat Report by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, and we need to talk about Isaiah Stevens on today's show because the Heat Summer League team has just been absolutely dominant. They went 4-0 in the regular season group play, whatever you want to call it. And they just dominated their opponents, winning every game by an average margin of 20-plus points. It's been unbelievable to watch, and it's actually placed them as the number one overall seed and team in Summer League. And they will be taking on the Golden State Warriors on Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time in the semifinals as the 1 seed. Golden State was the 4 seed. The top 4 teams all went 4-0, but Miami had the best point differential and average margin of victory, so that means they are the number 1 team. And it's because of performances from Isaiah Stevens, obviously Kel'el Ware, Josh Christopher, first 2 games of Jaime Jaquez Jr. But I don't want to go into depth about Jaime, Kel'el Ware, because we did a whole video on Kel'el Ware earlier this week. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it because I praised him, also said on some things he needs to work on. But he followed up that video with 2 dominant performances against the Raptors on Friday night, where he had another double-double, 17 points, 10 boards, and a really good game on Wednesday as well against the Dallas Mavericks. It's just been a revelation to watch him play, but I do want to focus it on Isaiah Stevens and a little bit of Josh Christopher with today's show. Because as you may know, or not, but I'll tell you today, the Heat are allowed 3 two-way contracts. One is to Keshad Johnson, another is to Zyon Pullin, and the last is to Dru Smith. Now, Keshad Johnson, prior to hurting his ankle, which is a bummer that he is hurt and unlikely to play in the final 2 Summer League games, or at least the semifinal, he has been terrific, and people want him on a standard contract, myself kind of included. He just looks like such a Heat culture player and another hidden gem that Miami found undrafted free agency, and they clearly liked him because he was the first UDFA to sign after the draft, and Miami came out and said that he was the highest player on their board after the draft concluded and were stunned that he didn't end up getting selected in the second round. So Miami picked him up. But the conversation that must be had is about the other 2 two-way contracts. Zyon Pullin, who the Heat signed relatively quickly as well in undrafted free agency out of Florida, and then Dru Smith. A lot of Heat fans, including myself, were very excited for Zyon Pullin because he's a smooth guard who shot 40+% from 3 for the Gators last season. Also just good decision maker, but he just has not been able to perform in Summer League to what I think our expectations would be for him. And we've seen a player like Isaiah Stevens flash onto the scene, and people kind of just want him to be the two-way player now for the Heat and grab one of those contracts. Stevens has been nothing short of phenomenal for Miami Summer League team. Through 4 games, this is not including the California Classic, this is only the 4 Las Vegas games where the Heat are 4-0. He's averaging 8.5 points a game, 8.5 assists, 3 rebounds while shooting 50% from the field and 75% from 3. Now, the volume on his threes aren't that high. He just simply doesn't take a lot of shots. But on the 4 games that he's played, he's averaging 2-3 attempts a game and making 1.5, which comes out to the 75%. But Stevens has been absolutely phenomenal, and I'm going to continue to talk about Stevens here. But if you want the Heat to sign Stevens to a 2-way contract, like the video, show him some love. I know Heat fans have showed him love on Twitter, but do it on the YouTube streets. Hit that thumbs up icon if you want Isaiah Stevens to be a 2-way player for the Miami Heat. Stevens just simply has to be a 2-way player for Miami. I mean, when he's outperformed Zyon Pullin the way he has, you can switch away your 2-ways any way you want. Now, I do want to preface this and say Stevens is already on an Exhibit 10 contract, so he will be at the Miami Heat training camp in October working with the real guys in giving the Heat front office and coaching staff a real look at him again to see if he deserves a 2-way deal. Now, they could technically give him one now, I believe, but they might just end up waiting because I don't think another team can snatch him up in free agency. So they can just hold on to him on an Exhibit 10 and then make that decision after they watch him play in training camp with the big dogs. But the thing that has impressed me the most in Stevens' game is his patience and decision making. And this really shouldn't surprise me. It shouldn't, because I watched him a ton at Colorado State. You can actually pull the Chat Sports office, and some people are going to think this is a little bullshit down in the comment section, but I was one of the biggest Colorado State fans, and I picked them to upset Texas in the March Madness tournament because of Isaiah Stevens. He was one of the best collegiate point guards in basketball last year. He averaged 15, 16 points a game, 8 or 9 assists. Like, he was one of the more dominating forces, and he's also a solid defender for his size. And the size is the biggest question with Stevens because he's barely 6 feet tall. He's listed at 6'1", but I believe at the combine he came in at just under 6 feet with no shoes on. So with shoes, sure, he's probably 6'1", but he's a pretty undersized guard, which I know Heat fans don't want undersized guards, and they've been wanting to get more athletic and more size to this roster. But there is a clear need for a backup point guard on this Heat standard team, and we don't have one. We have Rozier, we have Hero, but the lead backup guard is Josh Richardson. Like, I'm cool with Jay Rich. They've tried to do the point guard experiment in the past, but he is just simply not a good enough playmaker to help get better looks for his teammates. And we've seen how nice it is to have a true point guard like Stevens feeding Kalal Ware in the pick and roll, or driving downhill and dropping it off to him where he's sitting on the baseline waiting for a drop-off pass, or the extra pass at the perimeter where he finds an open shooter. Like, it's very clear that when the Heat have a true point guard that can facilitate and find open men, it just helps the offense flow. And with the need of a backup point guard, since DeLon Wright left in free agency and they really never filled that void, I think Isaiah Stevens needs to get a two-way contract. I'm not out here trying to say he needs a standard deal. I don't know if that's the case, but at least a two-way so the Heat can call him up and play minutes if needed with some injuries to that bench, because I think it's proven he can be a solid 10 to 15-minute guy off the bench where he is just playing defense, taking an open three if he's left open, and kind of just getting the Heat into the flow of their offense and running the pick and roll potentially with Bam, because he can use a nice little lob threat. I think Stevens has shown enough defensively, offensively, where he deserves a shot to make this roster and definitely deserves a two-way contract for the Miami Heat. We're going to continue the conversation here and talk about other players on this Heat Summer League roster. But make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We're under 40 subscribers away from 13K. Be awesome if we hit there today. Get there for Bam, man. I just want to get to 13K. I would appreciate all the love and support here. We put out daily content here on the channel. The question is, though, as we kind of go to the final portion of today's show, is if he gets a two-way contract, who gets booted? Well, it's clearly not going to be Keshad Johnson, right? I'd want Keshad on a standard deal. If I'm going to be completely honest, he should be on this team and Thomas Bryant shouldn't, but it is what it is. I'm not going to get into that on today's show. I've been pretty outspoken about how dumb that decision was. The question is, who should go between Zyon Pullin and Dru Smith? Well, to me, it's clearly Dru Smith. He's been in the league for a while. He's clearly never going to amount to anything. I'm over Dru Smith. The entire fan base is. But Zyon Pullin has not done a good job either of cementing his place on a two-way contract. In Summer League, he's only averaged 7 points a game, 2.3 assists, shooting 41% from the field and 50% from three. He's actually looked overwhelmed at times. And the thing that I liked about Pullin the most is, like, he's very confident, smooth, plays at his own pace. But in Summer League, at least, it looks like the game is a little bit too fast for him. Like, he can't make those split-second decisions where it's hitting a pass in a tight window. And it's been a little bit concerning. Now, I do like Pullin's ability to run the pick and roll and find his shot. He does an excellent job of getting to the elbow and either taking a little pull-up midi and drop coverage defenses that he sees, or stopping, let his defensive player get back to his hip and then take a little step back to where the defender can't really regain good ground there and contest, and he hits that little elbow jumper. Like, he's really good at that. but it just hasn't been enough. And Stevens has clearly been the better guard here to where I think he should be over or on the two-way deals over Zyon Pullin. But then there's the matter of Josh Christopher, who has averaged 17.3 points per game, shooting 57% from the field and 56.5% from three. The former first-round pick, I think it was in the 2022 draft, he's never really found a home, but he was talented enough to be taken in the first round, been in and out of the G League, in and out of the roster, was with the Rockets, found a home with Miami, and has been extremely good in the summer league and at the end of the G League last year. He's got extreme talent and the ability to just go off on a short notice. And I'm not sure if there's a role for him on this team, but if he can develop into a really, really good three-point shooter off the catch and off the move and not need the ball in his hands like he has had for the most part in Summer League so far, then maybe there is a role for him to be an off-ball shooter because he's athletic, he's a little bit of a better defender, and if he's able to really come along in his off-ball three-point shooting where he could do it off the pass, do it off curls, off movement. Maybe there's a role for him post Duncan Robinson. And I know that's a little bit farther down the line, but Duncan's contract isn't fully guaranteed next year. If they stash Christopher on a two-way deal, he performs well, he works on that stuff I was just talking about. Maybe they are fine cutting or waiving Duncan Robinson next year, eating the $9 million, but saving $10 million against the cap. And then Josh Christopher can be that three-point shooter off the bench. Like, I'm not really saying that it's going to happen, but I could see it being something Miami has an eye on for because of what Christopher's been able to show. But with that being said, he needs to have a two-way contract over Dru Smith. He does. It's simple. You can argue Stevens over Dru Smith guaranteed. But if I had to give my prediction and want for the Heat's two-way contract, it's simple as this. I'm putting Keshad Johnson, because since they can't do a standard deal, Isaiah Stevens, Josh Christopher. I like Zyon Pullin. I'd like to have him in the G League system for Miami, but he's just not earning a two-way contract right now, and we know the thoughts on Dru Smith. And are you with me? Do you want Dru Smith to be cut and off this roster, type Y for yes or type N for no? Just let me know in the comment section. But I believe it's absolutely necessary. I want Josh Christopher on a two-way to see if he can develop into that off-ball three-point shooter because he's athletic, he can defend, he's only 22 years old. So even if he stashes for another year and becomes an impact player next season for Miami at the end of the rotation because he was able to work and do a lot of good things in the G League this year, well, he's still only 23, 24 years old, and that's how old Jaquez and Duncan was when he came into the league, and UDFA Kendrick Nunn, like when he impacted the team. Like Christopher's still super young to where another year of development in Miami's system could really still net long-term positive rewards for the Heat. So I think that's something that absolutely needs to be done. That's going to do it for today's show. Appreciate everyone for hopping in and hanging out with me here as we talk some Isaiah Stevens, Christopher two-way contract. Like I said, Heat playing in the Summer League semifinals against the Warriors tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We will not be live for that. Just taking the weekend off here. It's been a grind over at the Heat Report for a while. But if they do end up winning that game, we will 100% be live for the Heat's Summer League Championship game, which is Monday night. So we'll let you know if that ends up being the realistic outcome. But either way, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video. Peace out.